She almost tore the envelope in half before she realized her hands were shaking. The room was so small that even the silence felt crowded. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and how old are you? And let me ask you something that might stay with you. If someone loved you for exactly who they thought you were, would you risk telling the truth if it meant they might walk away forever? Her name was Carolyn Fitch, and to the world around her, she was invisible by design. 63 years old. Soft voice, polite smile. She rented a single back room in a rundown guest house where the floor creaked and the window never fully closed. One bed pushed against the wall, one lamp, one suitcase she never unpacked. The landlord thought she was barely getting by. The neighbors assumed she was alone because life had been unkind. No one imagined she had chosen this life carefully. Because 12 miles away, behind gates most people only see in movies, sat her real life. A waterfront estate with a private drive, a glass atrium, and a staff she paid to keep everything running while she stayed away. Carolyn hadn't slept there in over a year. After selling the logistics firm she built alongside her late husband, the money came fast, heavy, and isolating. Suddenly, everyone listened too closely. Compliments had weight. Kindness came with expectations. So she folded herself into a life small enough to protect her heart. That's where Raymond Holt came in. 72 years old. Former railroad electrician. Widower. He lived 2 streets over in a modest duplex with mismatched furniture and a porch that sagged in the middle. He fixed things for neighbors without charging and still wore his watch even though it stopped years ago. They met one morning at a community garden when Carolyn struggled with a rusted spigot. Raymond loosened it with steady hands and said, "Things open easier when you don't force them." She remembered that line longer than she expected to. They didn't fall into romance. They eased into it. Conversations stretched without effort. Walks lasted longer than planned. Carolyn noticed how Raymond never checked his phone, never rushed her words. Raymond noticed how she listened like she was collecting pieces of him, not waiting for her turn to speak. When she mentioned living in one small room, he nodded like it made sense. That frightened her more than judgment ever could. Carolyn found herself watching him for signs. Would his kindness change if he thought she had nothing? Would his tone shift if she appeared needy? She mentioned worrying about future expenses. He offered reassurance, not solutions. She talked about missing travel. He said some places matter more when you imagine them together. Every gentle response made the truth heavier. If you were standing where she stood, would you tell him early, or would you cling to the peace a little longer? One evening, Raymond walked her back after dinner. The hallway to her room smelled like old wood and soap. When she opened the door, he paused, taking in the narrow space, not with pity, with curiosity. "It's quiet," he said. "Feels honest." Carolyn laughed, but her throat tightened. Honest was the one thing it wasn't. Rain started tapping the window, steady and soft. Raymond sat on the edge of the chair while Carolyn stayed near the door, as if she might need to escape. He talked about his wife, about how illness taught him the cost of pretending everything was fine. Carolyn felt the lie between them pulse like a living thing. She almost reached for the key hidden in her pocket, the one that unlocked the gate to the estate she never mentioned. Days later, Raymond asked her to walk with him to a place he hadn't visited in years. They stopped at a quiet overlook above the river. He pulled out a folded letter, edges worn thin. It was written by his wife shortly before she passed, about truth being an act of love, not danger. He didn't accuse. He didn't demand. He simply looked at Carolyn and said, "I don't need perfection. I just need to know who I'm standing beside." Carolyn's chest felt hollow. She realized she wasn't afraid of losing him because of the money. She was afraid of losing him because the truth would change how he saw her. The tiny room behind her suddenly felt like a shield and a prison at the same time. Her fingers closed around the key in her pocket. And for the first time, she understood that the next words she spoke would decide whether love could survive honesty. Her fingers stayed wrapped around that key as the wind moved through the trees, soft but insistent. Raymond waited. He didn't rush her. That made it harder. Carolyn realized that if he had pushed, she might have retreated again. But his patience felt like trust already given, and she knew she couldn't carry the lie another step forward. "There's something you need to see," she said finally, her voice quieter than she intended. Raymond studied her face, searching for humor or deflection, and found neither. He nodded once. "All right," he said, "when you're ready." They didn't go back to the tiny room. Carolyn surprised herself by turning the other way, toward the car she rarely used when she was with him. As they drove, the road widened, the houses spaced farther apart. Raymond noticed but didn't comment. When the iron gates came into view, his brow creased slightly, not with anger, but confusion. Carolyn stopped the car, took a breath that felt like standing on the edge of cold water, and unlocked the gate. The driveway seemed to stretch forever. The house emerged slowly, glass catching the fading light, quiet and immense. Raymond didn't speak when the car stopped. He just sat there, hands folded, taking it in. Carolyn felt exposed in a way she never had before. Not because of the size of the place, but because this was the part of her life she'd hidden even from herself. "I live here," she said. Or, "I own it. I don't stay much." The words sounded unreal out loud. Raymond turned to her, eyes steady, waiting for more. So she told him everything. About the company, the sale, the sudden wealth, the way people changed, how she shrank her life on purpose because she wanted to be seen without the noise. Her voice cracked when she admitted she was afraid he would stop looking at her the same way. Raymond leaned back and exhaled slowly. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the house systems Carolyn barely remembered how to use. "So, the small room," he said carefully. "That was a test?" Carolyn shook her head. "It was a hiding place," she replied. "I didn't know how else to protect something that mattered." They walked inside. The rooms echoed, just as she'd always hated. Raymond ran his hand along the back of a chair, then stopped near the window. "It's beautiful," he said, "but it feels lonely." That was when Carolyn knew he was still seeing her, not the house. Relief rushed through her so fast it almost knocked her breath away. Still, something lingered between them. Raymond finally turned to face her fully. "I need to be honest, too," he said. "I'm not upset about the money. I'm upset that you didn't trust me with the truth." The words stung because they were fair. Carolyn nodded, tears welling, and told him she understood if he needed time. That she didn't expect forgiveness just because she'd explained herself. Raymond surprised her then. He reached into his pocket and took out his old, broken watch, turning it over in his palm. "This thing stopped years ago," he said. "I keep it because it reminds me that time matters. And so does how we use it." He looked up at her. "I don't want what you have. I want to know if we can move forward without more rooms locked between us." They didn't fix everything that night. They didn't promise forever. What they did was sit together at the long kitchen table and talk until the house felt smaller. Carolyn admitted she didn't want to hide anymore. Raymond admitted he needed reassurance that honesty would be the rule, even when it was uncomfortable. They agreed on something simple and powerful. No more tests, no more disguises, no more shrinking or performing. In the weeks that followed, Carolyn stopped renting the tiny room. She didn't move fully back into the mansion either. Instead, she opened it up slowly, room by room, as if reclaiming parts of herself. Raymond came over not as a guest impressed by wealth, but as a partner helping her decide what stayed and what went. Some rooms remained empty on purpose, others filled with laughter they hadn't planned. What changed most wasn't where they lived, but how Carolyn carried herself. She no longer felt the need to hide behind less, and Raymond, seeing her fully, felt no smaller standing beside her. If you were watching them now, you wouldn't see a billionaire and a retiree. You'd see two people who chose honesty late in life and discovered it wasn't too late at all. If this story made you feel something about love, about truth, about starting again when you thought time had run out, take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who might need the reminder. And tell me in the comments what you believe matters more in love, protection or honesty. Don't forget to subscribe because stories like this are about reminding all of us that real connection doesn't care about age or money, only courage.